Doing.
When? It's gotta be louder than that.
Howdy, this is Lemmy with RevZilla. Today we're doing something just a little bit different. So I'm gonna kind of shift from RevZilla Lem into personal Lem for just a moment. So lately, I've had a little case of the doldrums. I've been down in the dumps. I've built a couple of bikes. They've been super duper expensive. And really, I'm kind of tired of spending money. I'm a little bit bummed out on pulling out my wallet every time I want to have a little bit of fun. So I decided I want to have a little bit of cheap fun. So I scored one of these. For about $500, you can go find yourself a brand spanking new mini bike. Now I jumped on this puppy and just zipping around. This thing has a top speed, GPS indicated of 24 miles an hour, and that's with yours truly on top of this machine. Now 24 miles an hour is pretty fun. All that having been said, I think we can probably get this thing to go a little bit faster because faster is a little bit more fun. Mini bikes are a blast. If you've never ridden around on one of them, you should. Going really fast, really close to the ground feels really, really fast. It's an awesome time. So here's how the plan kind of progressed. I headed over to Harbor Freight. There's my receipt, $116.63. That got me one of these, a Predator engine. Now you may say, well, Lem, you have a motor in there. Why would you go with a different motor? Well, here's the cool part about mini bikes. In many ways, they're a lot like Harley Davidsons and like small block Chevys. They're kind of common. You can simply take one mower motor out and put another mower motor in. Regardless of brand, they all usually use a pretty common base pattern as well as some common dimensions that make them easy to swap into and out of chassis. Now this particular motor we were looking at in this puppy, 196 cc's. It's a Honda GX clone. This is a very loose Honda GX clone, but we're at 212 cc's. Now that additional couple of cubic centimeters doesn't sound like a big deal. However, we're talking a board stroked motor here for simply $117. Now that's not all. We're of course not going to leave this thing stock. We've got a whole bevy of performance parts to throw at this, again, so we can rip that governor off, really crank up the performance on this thing. Hopefully we're looking at having a top speed on this engine-wise of 6,000 or 6,200 RPMs, more than twice what the stocker is at, give or take. So in order to do this, of course, we've got to get some parts in here that are going to survive the assault. So just about everything I've picked up for this is really kind of geared towards making this thing last a little bit longer. Let's dig into some of the parts we actually have for this, and I'll explain to you what we're doing and why. So step over here, I'll show you some of the stuff that I'm going to throw at this thing. So again, remember, cost was kind of paramount for me here. I didn't want to spend a bunch of money on this. So I've got roughly 500 bucks into the bike, and I spent roughly 500 bucks on some parts. This whole project should come in right around 1,000 bucks. Not an inconsequential amount of money, but also not really going to bust the bank either. Alrighty, let's start taking some stuff apart. I'll explain to you some of the things I bought and why I bought them. First up, we've got this puppy. Man, this is beautiful. Check this out. It's a Billet Conrod. This thing is awesome looking. It's almost too nice for a mower motor. And the reason we went with Billet here is because the stock unit is cast. When you're spinning that thing really fast, 5, 6, 7,000 RPMs, they can simply fly apart. We don't want that. That's dangerous. I've literally watched these things come out of a motor before. It's not pretty. I mean, it's cool, but it's not pretty. Let's move on to the next stuff. This is another ARC piece we picked up, and that's a Billet Flywheel. So, this thing's kind of a cool piece. Again, being billet and not cast, when this thing is spinning at high RPMs, we don't have as big a danger of this thing flinging around and possibly coming apart. There's a couple things ARC did to make this thing actually go faster. First, they built some ignition advance right into the flywheel. Again, ignition advance is going to help as we push this motor to higher and higher RPMs. ARC knows that most people who are buying this are buying it simply because they're going to rip the governor out of the lawnmower motor, and they recognize that the thing's actually going to spin a little bit faster, and they make the advance work with the engine build. So let's put this thing back, and I'll show you some of the other pieces we've gone with here. We've got a pretty full gasket set here, obviously, because I'm going to be ripping this brand new motor apart. Move past there. This piece is cool. It's actually kind of ridiculous when you look at one of these, because I didn't even know they made these, but it turns out they do. That's right, this is a hot camshaft for a lawnmower engine. We're looking at similar lift levels on here, but a little bit more duration. Again, duration is going to help, again, high up there in the RPM range. Normally, I'm a big fan of building slow revving motors and make big torque at the bottom, so this is kind of a departure for me, but this cam is going to be kind of fun to play with. Again, because we've got more duration, this thing is going to be set up for high-speed engine work. So there's a few other pieces I've got here. Pardon the mess. We've got a performance header as well as a muffler for this thing. And some other little bits and doodads here. We've got a high performance clutch, and I've also got a couple other pieces we're going to need to actually modify this motor. Now, if you think about it, it's kind of interesting because the stuff I bought here is really the exact same stuff that I sell. Regardless of whether you're working on a 6.5 horsepower lawnmower engine or 180 horsepower superbike, the way to make something go faster is kind of the same all across the board if you're working on a 4-stroke combustion engine. You need to get air and fuel in a little faster, you need to get exhaust out, and you need to jack up the RPMs and the compression ratio as much as you safely can. So, the next time you see me, of course, I'm going to be wearing a different t-shirt, and we're going to be elbows deep in a motor.
There's a motor so light you could hold it with one hand.
What's the tip here, Lemmy?
Make sure you don't install it backwards.
Yeah, but I don't know what those marks mean. I don't know where you are, like in terms of.
The chances of this not running is exponentially increasing.